Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Jeremy the Juice Baker. Today, talking about all things SEC football. While the pads are put up and the players are taking finals and going home to see family and getting ready for summer workouts, the boxing gloves got put on, not by the players, but by the coaches. Nick Saban, in an interview earlier this week, talked about the NIL, pointed some fingers, saying that especially right at Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher saying, "Hey, we're not uh, you know, they paid all these players and all that." Jimbo Fisher fired back and wasn't real thrilled about what he said. Basically, ended their friendship. Got kind of defensive about some things, but I don't really think Nick Saban was wrong in what he said. I really don't. I think Nick Saban said that something that everybody knows. I mean, it's public knowledge now. It's in the paper. It's on the news. Like these kids get paid to play college football, and I don't think Nick Saban's a big fan of it. Do I think he mean to single them out? No. He even said in an apology that, hey, I didn't mean to single anybody out, but he absolutely singled somebody out. Do I think he was wrong? No. Do I think he could have said it in a better way or used a different platform to do it? Absolutely. Either way, it created a fantastic rivalry. Texas A&M has not necessarily been a perennial powerhouse by any means, but they've always kind of given Alabama fits, even back to the Johnny Manziel days. And anybody with a mobile running quarterback kind of gives Alabama defenses some problems. And this game is no exception. Zach Calzada last year, Johnny Manziel a few years ago. I think Jimbo Fisher is he's hot. He's upset, but I don't really know what he's upset about because he kept kind of saying, I can't believe I have to defend a 17-year-old kid. Well, you don't have to defend a 17-year-old kid, Jimbo. He wasn't attacking the kid. He was attacking you. It's no secret that, Texas is big-time oil money. It is what it is. Alabama, we don't have oil money. The USCs of the world, places Notre Dame's, they don't have oil money. Texas A&M, their pockets are probably a little deeper than most. Same with Texas, University of Texas. They have the funds to do these type of things. So you go back and you look at Texas A&M's their track record, their recruiting history over the past 4 years or so. I think they've got 5 7-star recruits in 4 years. Then all of a sudden the NIL breaks loose, and they got 7 in 1 year, number 1 recruiting class in the country, and arguably the best ever. So don't tell me that money didn't have something to do with that. They were 4-4 in the SEC last year. That doesn't exactly spark a lot of interest with these 5-star recruits coming out of high school. So I don't know. Do I think that some money passed hands? Absolutely. Do I care? No. Do I think it's a great rivalry game now? Absolutely. And it wasn't just Jimbo. Nick Saban didn't go after, but he made some comments about Deion Sanders. And Deion Sanders kind of hinted back about, maybe kind of flirted with a racial line or two there, talking about our people. Well, at the end of the day, Deion, let me tell you, bud, your people play for every school in this country. So you can't really use that as an excuse. And your culture that you created at Jackson State, well, that culture is in every locker room from high school all the way to the pros. So your culture is not much different than anything else. Other schools just don't have a name like Deion Sanders as their head coach. That's the biggest difference to me. Like I said, do I really care? No, not one bit. The NIL and the transfer portal have changed the college game tremendously. Some people are getting butthurt about it. There's 3 coaches right there that I don't really think one doesn't like the idea of it. The other 2 don't like that they're getting called out about it. So October 8th, Texas A&M, Alabama. Watch that game. A lot of tension. Going to be fun. I cannot wait. But we're not here to just talk about that. We're going to talk about all of the SEC teams and their spring and their summer workouts coming up, the big changes I expect to see. We'll start right off the top. with the defending national champions out of the East, Georgia Bulldogs. Head coach Kirby Smart has been there for a few years now, had a just ridiculously strong defense last year. Didn't really show up that well in the SEC title game, but boy, they came back with a vengeance in the national championship game, wound up beating Alabama. That game probably could have gone a lot of different ways, had some key players not got hurt, but that's why you play the game and not on paper. But they lost a lot of kids. They lost a lot of good athletes on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think that defense is going to be as good this year coming up as they were last year. I could be wrong, but when you lose that many guys, when you lose Jordan Davis in the middle like that, some key linebackers and defensive backs, you're really going to struggle. So I don't know. We'll see. I know they picked up their tight ends are going to be a mess. Stetson Bennett's back. There was a lot of big questions about him. Could he compete at this level? Could he win a national title at this level? And the answer is obviously yes. But now he's got another big target to throw to. Their tight ends are just huge guys, 6'5", 250 or so. They're going to be tough to control and to cover this coming season for any defense. Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, anybody coaching against them is going to have their hands full. I expect Georgia to be a contender in the East. I don't really think there's anybody quite to that level yet of Georgia. I think there's some really talented teams in the East. I think it's probably going to be a 3-team race back to Atlanta this year. One of those other teams I expect could possibly make a run. Florida, obviously, just by the amount of talent. They're coached by second-year coach Bill Napier. They did pick up a wide receiver out of Arizona State, Pearsall. He's supposed to be a stud receiver. Pretty good, quick hand slot receiver type guy. So I don't know. We'll see. They've got a pretty solid quarterback down there. But I think defensively was their downfall last year. They were like 85th nationally in scoring defense or something. So not great by any stretch of the imagination. They're going to have to get better on that side of the ball if they plan on competing against the Georgias of the world, especially on that side of the conference. But I do look for them to make some improvements. I think they picked up a couple of good key players on the defensive side of the ball for this year in the transfer portal. So we'll see. Moving on down the list, Kentucky. Look, Mark Stoops has done a fantastic job over there. Nobody's ever going to take that away from him. They got a quarterback, Will Levis, that played out of his mind last year, had a great year last year. Expect to see that again. They've got I can't remember his name, a good returning receiver that will probably play in the NFL one day. I expect them to do good. Defensively, they were good last year too. They were, I think, fourth in total defense or scoring defense in the SEC. So definitely not a bad year. Do I think they're going to make a run at the East? Probably not. They've got the Tennessees and Georgias and Floridas of the world, but Kentucky could probably break some hearts moving forward. Missouri, Missouri's just going to do Missouri. They're not exactly, one of the big, strong powerhouses of the SEC. Their defense was terrible last year, like 113th in the nation in scoring defense. So not exactly somebody that they're going to strike fear in the hearts of the opponents. They hadn't had a winning season since 2018. They do have some quarterback controversy up there. That remains to be seen who their starter is going to be. It should be do I expect them to have a pretty decent season? Yeah, they could. They really could. Do I think they're going to compete in the East? No, I don't. I think they're probably kind of a middle of the pack. And the only reason why I think they're that high is because you're playing on the same side of the ball as South Carolina, or same side of the conference as South Carolina and Vandy. That's not knocking any one of those schools. I just think that Missouri, talent-wise, probably has a little more talent than South Carolina and Vandy. But getting to South Carolina in a few minutes, they did pick up a key guy in the transfer portal this year. That should help them win quite a few games in the next coming seasons. That guy is Spencer Rattler. I mean, that's no secret. He left Oklahoma with his tail between his legs. He went to South Carolina, and they inherited a phenomenal quarterback in what was probably a mediocre at best quarterback room. Is now solidified as a pretty dang good one in my opinion. Spencer Radler, he's always he's been a tough guy to compete against over the years, especially at Oklahoma, where he had just so much talent around him. Obviously, he's a mobile quarterback, can do a lot of things with his legs. He wants to be known as a passing quarterback. He wants to be able to throw the ball down the field, and he's gotten pretty good at it. All reports coming out of South Carolina is that he can really, his deep ball game has really improved tremendously. So we'll see. They've got to run the ball better. They got to get him some support. The entire offensive line from last year is back. So that they should have some pretty good continuity up front. That'll help that running game. They'd only averaged like 3.5 yards a carry last year, which is, I think, one of the worst in the SEC. Moving forward, I think they're going to be a pretty decent team. I don't think they're going to be competitive in the East. Do I think, they could probably win a game or two? They're not supposed to. Yeah, I think they do. They could probably upset like a Florida, possibly even a Tennessee. So we'll see. Should be a good time. Speaking of Tennessee, Josh Heupel, look, they've played good football. They really, really have. And I hate Tennessee. I hate them with a passion. But Josh Heupel, his quarterback, Hendon Hooker, had a phenomenal jam-up season last year, threw for over 4,000 yards, not very many interceptions. Most of their defense is back for the 2022 season. So, we'll see how it goes. I think offensively they were in the top tier of all the SEC last year, and I expect this year to be more of the same. Picked up some key players in the transfer portal this year, had a good spring. Hendon Hooker had a real good spring. Barring any kind of injuries next year, I think realistically Tennessee could give Georgia some fits on that eastern side of the ball, or on the eastern side of the conference. I'm sorry. Look, last but not least, they're least. Vandy, 85 scholarship players a year. Most of that is spent on guys that are going to be doctors and lawyers one day, not necessarily NFL football players, which is fine. Vandy, they do what they do. Clark Lee, their second-year head coach up there, he's going to have his hands full. They don't exactly have the depth that these other schools have. They went 2-10 last year. A 4-8 season, 6-6. 4-8 season. For them is a 5-7 season is probably what you're going to get out of them. Do I think they're going to be? No, they're not going to compete. Sorry, Vandy. I love your town though. Nashville's a great place to visit. Me and my wife go there all the time. Going over to the West, where the kings of college football have lived for the past few years with Alabama and LSU and these Texas A&Ms, these teams that have just been so tough to beat over the years. We'll start up top, Alabama. Obviously lost some guys, lost our big play receivers, James Williams to the NFL. Mechie, lost him. Brian Robinson, our running back, lost him, lost some guys on the defensive side of the ball. But I think Alabama's biggest holes they're going to have to fill this year is the offensive line. I mean, they looked terrible during the spring. They looked very porous at best. I think they gave up 12 sacks in the spring game. Granted, a lot of that's because the quarterback's in a non-contact jersey and he can't exactly tuck the ball and run, but still, 12 sacks is way too much. And you're going up against arguably one of the best defensive fronts in the country, Dallas Turner, Will Anderson, all those guys up front. I think, that offensive line, they're going to have any choice but to get better when you're practicing against those guys every single day. Nick Saban's going to have his hands full trying to figure out where to put guys. Alex Achior, that he wasn't there during the spring. He was injured. He was sitting it out. So I think he's probably one of our better returning offensive linemen. We lost some guys to the draft, which is kind of the norm for a Nick Saban coach football team. But, we'll see. I think they're obviously one of the contenders in the West, just like they have been for the past several years. The only team I can really see giving them a hard time this year is going to be Texas A&M. But we'll get to them here in a few minutes. We'll move on down the list to Auburn. Look, I've said it since the day they announced that Brian Harsin was their head coach. Brian Harsin is not the man or the coach to bring Auburn back to football glory. I'm sorry he's not. Um, the best thing to come out of Auburn this spring was Bo Nix, because I tell you, there was a lot of people that did not like him at quarterback. There's a lot of people that didn't like him as a person, as a player, as a teammate. Him transferring to Oregon, he went all the way across the country to play, which, maybe that kind of style of offense fits him better. I don't know. I know there was a lot of people glad to see him go, but that left a big hole in that quarterback room for them to fill. Their spring game. A lot of it, okay, look, first of all, a lot of that problems that Bo Nix had was not Bo Nix's fault. Their receivers were terrible last year, dropping the balls, and the spring was no different. There was several drop balls. TJ Finley and Robbie Ashford both had several, as the two emerging starting quarterbacks. Zach Calzada did not play. He transferred in from Texas A&M. He did not play in the spring game. So hopefully, Auburn can turn their season around. Defensively, they ought to be a fairly good defensive football team this year. But I don't look for Auburn to make a run in the West. 7-5 season probably is about what they're looking at again this year. And I think if they're not – I think if Auburn's going to be competitive, they're going to have to find a different head coach. They really are. Brian Harsin did what he did at Boise State, but I just don't think he's an SEC caliber of a coach. I really don't. And I think a lot of people will agree with me. But, it remains to be seen. He might surprise us all. I think he brings a level of toughness and a level of confidence to an Auburn football program that's like that in the past few years. But do I think his football mind is that of the Jimbo Fishers and the Nick Sabans? Absolutely not. I do not. Moving on, Arkansas. Look, guys, Arkansas basketball, baseball, football, they're getting better in all three phases of the major sports of college athletes. They picked up a good linebacker in Drew Sanders in the transfer portal from Alabama. They're going to have a pretty good defense next year to go along with a pretty good offense. I think that Arkansas could be a contender if they stay healthy. They've still got to go through the likes of run the West Gauntlet, the LSUs, the A&Ms, the Alabamas, the Auburns. But I do think that the days of 54-6 Alabama over Arkansas days are gone right now. I really do. Arkansas is getting better on both sides of the football, and I look for them to be competitive over the next coming years. I don't think it'll be this year, but I do think that over the next coming years they could be somebody. LSU, look, big time coaching hire in the offseason. Brian Kelly from Notre Dame comes down. He immediately starts talking like he's a Cajun. So let's see, it's been 6 months now. So he ought to be Coach O. Like he ought to be talking just like him by now. But no, in all seriousness, he inherited a football program that was, 2 years removed from a national title, and they did not look anything like a national football or a national championship contending team last year. A lot of holes on the defensive and offensive side of the football that he's going to have to fill. I don't think he was able to fill some of those holes, especially up front. So he's going to have to go with maybe some walk-ons this year, some guys that maybe not necessarily scholarship players, which will hurt, especially in the SEC West. That's a grueling schedule. It's every week you're getting beat on by some of the best defenses in the country. LSU probably an 8-4 football team this year, and the only reason why they're that is because I think Brian Kelly brings a certain element to the team that kind of oozes some confidence. Offensively, they should be a pretty good football team. Defensively, they should be too. Just based on the talent that's down in Louisiana alone, they should always be competitive. I think the difference is going to be, right now, he doesn't necessarily have the players that he would typically recruit in there. Maybe not all of them anyway. So I think he'll be looking for a quarterback over the next year or so. He's got 3 guys in the quarterback room right now. Don't really know which one's going to be the starter. So definitely a controversy there. So we'll see. Ole Miss, they're just getting transfers from everywhere. I mean, Lane Kiffin, I think he's the self-proclaimed transfer king. He's going to come in and it shut off May 1st, and my gosh, there's kids from all over the country that showed up to that school during the transfer portal. So look, he's already got his quarterback. Last year's quarterback left. He's done. He was a senior. He's gone. He's already got a guy to replace him. Going to be another dual threat, throw the ball down the field, just like he was at Alabama, just like he was at USC, just like he was at Tennessee. He's going to be competitive. He's going to be tough. They always give, especially teams like Alabama, fits with those type quarterbacks. So I don't look for this one to be any different. I think Ole Miss is going to be a strong contender. We'll see. Lane Kiffin, I've always that guy. I mean, what can you say about him that nobody else has already said? It's fun to watch. It really is. It's fun football to watch. Should be a good time. Mississippi State, not really a whole lot to say about them. They've kind of been falling off since Dak Prescott graduated a few years ago. Not really a whole lot. Will Rogers, their quarterback, should be a pretty good, a fairly decent team. Again, this year, 6-6, 7-5 season. Probably close to the bottom in the SEC or in the West. I'm sorry. I think probably Mississippi State and Auburn are probably the two last teams in the West, in my honest opinion, this year. But if they can possibly pull off maybe an upset over an Auburn or an Arkansas, maybe even Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl, they could step their way up a little bit, maybe to help in their recruiting class for 2023. But I think the number 2 team in the West this year, Texas A&M, they got some big holes to fill on defense. They really do. And Jimbo knows that. He knows that there's some issues on the defensive side of the ball. They picked up some kids from the transfer portal and some recruits coming in that should help them tremendously. They lost their quarterback, Zach Calzada, to Auburn this year. So going to be starting over in that category. He hasn't really named a starter or named who's going to be. Spring game, I don't think anybody looked that impressive on that side or for the quarterback position for Jimbo. So, right now it's a big question mark for everybody, all A&M fans, who it's going to be. And, he's talking a whole lot of crap. And that to me is the only reason why I don't know how well this rivalry between Alabama is going to go for Jimbo, or not rivalry with Alabama, but rivalry with Nick Saban. Because he ain't got a quarterback, and if you ain't got a quarterback in the SEC, you ain't got nothing, because you can't run the ball against these defenses. These defensive front 4, front 7, they are big, they're strong, they're fast, and they will hurt you. So you've got to be able to throw the football. And if Jimbo don't find a quarterback, he's not going to be able to throw the football. And he has a mediocre, and he'll go last year like he did. He'll be a 4-4 in the SEC again this year. Takes. My prediction for the SEC championship, it's hard not to go against Alabama and Georgia again, especially with everything that I've seen in the spring. Obviously, that's why we play the football games, to see who's going to be who. But SEC championship game, I predicted Alabama and Georgia to be back again this year. Probably going to be a little bit different type of game. Both defenses are kind of – I think Alabama maybe has the better defense this year than Georgia does. So but Stetson Bennett coming back and Bryce Young, we've got 2 now veteran quarterbacks in the backfield for both teams. So it should be a good season for both, hopefully, if they can stay healthy. Anytime Kirby Smart and Nick Saban get together, it's going to be a good football game. The SEC championship and the national championship was no different. As long as we can keep guys healthy, I think both schools will make another run for a national title. But anyway, guys, that's all for me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As always, if you got anything you want me to talk about, email me, text me, call me, anything like that. I look forward to a great season, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, guys.